Okay, we are back with James Rapien of Cincinnati Bengals Talk on YouTube and also the Bengals Locked On podcast. This time we're going to dive into what James does, I think, as well as anybody here in the Cincinnati area, and that is dive into the NFL draft and what the Bengals have to do in the draft. And he's always got a hot take. So let's start there. Let's go big, James, right off the bat. What is the hot take you have for the Bengals in the upcoming draft?
Well, everyone's talking about defense, and certainly, I totally get it. You're focused on defense. You're focused on the offensive line. The Bengals have 6 picks in this year's draft. I guarantee they use one of them on a running back, and I guarantee they use one of them on a tight end. 2 skill players right there.
Whoa.
Boom, out of the 6 picks.
Now, there's a thought they might keep Mike Gesicki. Certainly, I think you want them to keep Mike Gesicki. But is your thought that Mike Gesicki is more wide receiver than he is tight end?
Absolutely. You saw what Eric All brought, and it's really unfortunate that they're not going to have him this year, and his football future is just in question overall. And so you need that. You need to find another young tight end, and this is just a great class for it. My motto this time of year, Joe, is you draft players, not positions. And I know a lot of people are focused on defense, and it's a great defensive line draft, so they'll address it. But I would be shocked if the best player available isn't a tight end at some point. And the same thing goes for running back as well.
Okay, so let's go right there then. What's the highest, if you were the Bengals, you would use on a running back? Bengals pick 17th overall. Would you go as high as the first round to take a running back even though they have Chase Brown?
I see, this is where people are going to roll their eyes, but I wouldn't rule it out in early March. And the reason why you can't rule it out in early March is, what if Ashton Jeanty from Boise State, who's widely considered a top 5 player in this class, is suddenly there at 17, and you have him as a top 5 player on your board, and the next closest guy is 15th on your board? Do you deviate from your board that much? And so, no, I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't rule out running back or tight end in the first round. I think there's 2 draftable first-round tight ends minimum, and Colston Loveland out of Michigan, and then you have Tyler Warren out of Penn State. And so one of those 3 guys, whether it's Jeanty, Warren, Loveland, I think all 3 would be in the mix at 17. That doesn't mean they would take them. Would be pretty surprised if they went against their board if there's a top defensive lineman there. And whether it's a tackle or an edge rusher, they can use both. We know they need to be able to get more pressure on opposing quarterbacks. So I do think that if I had to handicap the most likely scenario at 17 today, it would be either a defensive tackle or a defensive end.
And that's where it feels like where we are as people who cover this team or cover the NFL draft. We're looking at positions in early March, maybe not necessarily some of the big names the Bengals might take, but do you have 2 or 3 names that Bengals fans should think about here the next 5 or 6 weeks before the NFL draft?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you look at some of these guys, and James Pierce Jr. is someone out of Tennessee who looks like he should be able to bring you the juice. And Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss is someone on the interior that will probably be pretty tempting if he's there at 17. Another name out of Michigan is Kenneth Grant, and he's more of a DJ Reader nose tackle type, a big body type. And the question I have for him is, okay, well, do the Bengals think that he can play all 3 downs, or is he more of a 2-down lineman? Because if he's a 2-down guy, you're probably not taking him in the first round. If you think he can get after the passer a little bit, then that's exactly what you're looking for.
Well, this was the first conversation James and I have had that wasn't about Steph Curry in about a month. He's always gracious with his time. He knows what he's talking about. The great James Rapien. Follow him, YouTube, also the Bengals Locked On podcast. He does great work. Bengals fans love him. That's why we had him on the show. James, thanks.
Thanks, Joe.